In recent years, America has witnessed a disturbing rise in violence. From mass shootings to violent protests, from increasing crime rates in major cities to growing polarization and unrest, many Americans are asking the same question. What is happening to our country? Why is violence on the rise? And what can we do about it? Today, we'll explore the root causes of this alarming trend, examine the various forms of violence affecting America, and consider possible solutions for a more peaceful future. To understand the rise of violence in America, we first need to acknowledge that violence is not new to this country. From its inception, America has been shaped by conflict and violence, whether in the form of wars, colonization, slavery, or internal strife. The nation was born through the violence of the American Revolution and has seen periods of intense internal conflict, from the Civil War to labor strikes and civil rights movements. Expert, media, black and white footage of violent clashes in American history, archival images of protests and riots. America's history is punctuated by violent clashes over power, rights, and resources. But what we're seeing today is different in some ways. While violence has always existed, the factors driving the current surge are unique to our modern polarized society. The 20th century, despite advances in civil rights and democracy, saw continued violence including race riots, political assassinations, and social upheavals during the 1960s. However, the nature of violence today appears to be changing. The scale, frequency, and underlying causes of violence in America are shifting in response to new social, political, and economic pressures. In recent years, crime rates, particularly violent crime rates, have surged in many parts of the country. Cities that were once seeing declines in violence are now experiencing spikes in homicides, shootings, and assaults. According to FBI statistics, the United States saw a significant increase in violent crimes over the past few years, particularly in 2020 and 2021. Police officer media, police officer giving a statement, police press conference on gun violence, police interaction with community. We're seeing an increase in gun violence, in gang-related activity, and in incidents of domestic violence. The factors behind this are complex, ranging from economic struggles to the proliferation of firearms and breakdowns in community trust. While crime data is an important indicator, violence in America goes beyond street crime. Mass shootings, once shocking, have become disturbingly frequent. Schools, shopping malls, and places of worship have all been targeted in horrific acts of mass violence, leaving communities shattered and reigniting debates about gun control. Gun violence in particular has become a defining issue of our time. With more than 400 million guns in circulation, more guns than people, the debate over gun rights versus gun control has grown increasingly divisive, reflecting broader tensions in American society. One of the key factors contributing to the rise in violence in America is the amplification effect of social media and the 24-hour news cycle. In the past, violent events were often localized or took time to reach national attention. Today, social media ensures that violent incidents are immediately broadcast to millions, creating a sense of constant crisis. Expert. When violent events are shared, retweeted, and discussed online, they often take on a life of their own. This can create a climate of fear, anger, and sometimes even imitation. People may feel more justified in violent behavior when they see similar actions widely publicized or supported by others online. Research has shown that constant exposure to violence, whether through the news or social media, can desensitize individuals, making them more accepting of violent solutions to conflict. Additionally, misinformation and conspiracy theories spread easily online, fueling anger, paranoia, and radicalization. Platforms designed to maximize engagement often amplify the most sensational, divisive content, driving polarization and encouraging conflict. The result is a society where disagreements quickly escalate into threats or acts of violence. Political polarization is another significant driver of the rise in violence. Over the past decade, America has become increasingly divided, with political ideologies hardening into opposing camps. This polarization isn't just a matter of policy differences, it has seeped into every aspect of American life, with many people viewing those on the other side of the political spectrum as enemies rather than fellow citizens. Political scientist, Polarization isn't just about disagreement, it's about distrust. When people no longer trust the government, the media, or each other, the potential for violence increases. We see this in the rise of political extremism, and in the growing belief that violence is a legitimate way to achieve political goals. The events of January 6, 2021, when a violent mob stormed the U.S. Capitol, marked a dangerous turning point in American politics. It highlighted the extent to which political violence had become normalized in some circles, with many participants believing they were acting in defense of democracy. Political leaders and media figures have also played a role in fueling this division. As rhetoric on both sides becomes more extreme, the space for civil discourse narrows, and violence increasingly becomes seen as an acceptable way to resolve political disputes. While political polarization and social media amplification are critical factors, the rise in violence is also closely linked to economic conditions. Over the past few decades, income inequality in America has reached record highs. Many Americans feel left behind by the economy, struggling to make ends meet in an era of soaring housing costs, stagnant wages, and limited economic mobility. Historically, periods of economic instability are often accompanied by increases in violence. When people feel that they have no stake in society or that the system is rigged against them, they are more likely to turn to violence as a form of expression or survival. This frustration has fueled many of the protests we've seen in recent years, from the Occupy Wall Street movement to protests over racial injustice. While most of these protests begin peacefully, the underlying anger over economic inequality and systemic racism can easily tip over into violence, especially when met with heavy-handed responses from law enforcement. America's relationship with guns is a defining aspect of its culture, and it's impossible to discuss the rise of violence without addressing the country's deep-rooted gun culture. With more firearms in circulation than people, America stands out among